Hi, I'm Jeff Tehan. I'm a quality engineer on the Red Hat CloudForms product. In this video, I'll be showing you how to configure the CloudForms capacity and utilization feature, as well as enable metrics collection on both Windows and Linux virtual machines. The task we're going to perform today, we're going to quickly create Windows and RHEL 7.2 virtual machines. We're going to enable capacity and utilization feature inside CloudForms. On the two virtual machines, we're going to enable metrics collection on Azure. We're going to examine the metrics table inside the CloudForms database. And finally, we're going to look at the VM utilization and compare the values against the Azure metrics. So I hope you find this presentation helpful, and I thank you very much for your time.
Let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, we're going to go through this in time-lapse mode here. We're just going to create a basic Windows Server 2012 virtual machine. And really the only thing I'm going to do different from normal is I'm going to disable the metrics collection on this VM so that you can see what it looks like with it off and with it on. And the way you do that is you just disable monitoring for the diagnostics. Now, by default, the VMs you create are going to have all these features turned on if you use the Azure portal. But because a lot of people are uploading their own images and creating them using the Azure CLI and Azure PowerShell, there's no guarantee that these features are going to be enabled. And I want to show you what to do if you have a VM that's not responding, how to go into Azure and check to see if the diagnostics are indeed being collected. So the second VM here, this is the RHEL 7.2 image that's available through the Azure Marketplace. And as you can see, I disabled the monitoring again. So these two VMs are ready to go, and we'll use them for the rest of the demo. Now by default, capacity and utilization is not enabled on a CloudForms appliance. So what we need to do is go in and verify that these settings are turned on correctly. As you can see, there's two green quad icons there. Those are the two VMs we just created. Those are the ones we're going to be using. If you go into settings and then configuration, if it goes to the default page, what you're going to see is server control, and under server roles you want to make sure you have these three items turned on: the coordinator, the data collector, and the data processor. It's important to have all three. If you have the first two but not the second, you'll have the data, but you won't actually see it associated with the virtual machine. And then if you go to the region and click on CNU collection, you want to make sure these are turned on for all clusters and for all data stores. This is the requirement for any cloud provider, and is certainly required for Azure. Alright, that's all we really need to do to turn on capacity and utilization collection and display. Let's go back to our providers. What I wanted to show you is a VM that has Azure metrics enabled properly and one that doesn't, so you can see what it's going to look like within CloudForms. So if I go up to another provider and click on the test RMVM1, under monitoring you'll see I have the utilization enabled. This means I can go in and take a look at the metrics that are being collected for that virtual machine. And I don't really have a lot right now, so let me just narrow it down to the last hour here so that you can at least see that data is being collected. If you see any data at all, anything, it's being collected. Now we're going to go to the VM where the Azure metrics has not been enabled, and you'll see utilization is turned off there. So let's go in and enable that on Azure. What we want to do is we want to go to the VM. We'll start with the RHEL one. You can tell if metrics are enabled on the overview section if there's any data whatsoever in the monitoring. In this case, there's just a banner and no other items. So if you scroll down the monitoring and click diagnostics, what you want to do is first you want to turn this on, and then you want to tell it which diagnostics and metrics to collect. And you need to have a storage account because it actually saves this data to a file. So I'll just select my default here. We'll save that. Now for Linux, we just do basic metrics collection. As you'll see in Windows, you can bring all kinds of data back to CloudForms, although we don't actually use all of it. So same thing. If you look at Overview, I already know there's no data here. It would look the same. So let's go into Diagnostics, turn it on, select the metrics we want to collect. We want to tell it which account to use. And let's see, storage account. And you'll see these containers called boot metrics underscore and then the name of the virtual machine. Okay, and remember to save this, otherwise it won't be turned on. So these metrics actually have to be collected before they can be displayed. So I'm going to turn off the recording for an hour and let some data show up. Okay, it's been an hour. Now, as you can see, it's still not enabled on the CloudForms side yet. What I want to do is we're going to go into the database itself. I'm using the Postgres admin so we can actually see it. We're going to scroll down to the metrics table, and what we want to do is take a look at the data and see if our records are starting to be added yet. And this tool has a pretty useful feature. You can just show the last 100 rows. So let's go ahead and select those. Okay, this is going to be the before the metrics were turned on. So all we're going to see is that VM where the metrics were being collected, the test RMVM1. And if you just scroll over to the right here, it'll show you the resource name in this case. There we go, test RMVM1. And I'm just showing the last 100 rows. Okay, so that's the before. What we want to do is go back into Azure real quick and just make sure that Azure itself is collecting metrics. So as you can see, there's CPU usage on both of our demo machines. So now we know that Azure is storing the metrics we're going to need to collect inside CloudForms. So we'll go back to CloudForms and we'll take a quick look at the database. We're going to just refresh. I'm just going to bring all the rows in this time. And it's just going to show you real quickly at the bottom here that we have the RHEL and the WS 2012 data being collected. There you go. Okay. Oop. Test RM there, RHEL 7.2. Alright, now that enough time has passed, what we're going to do is go back and we're going to refresh this VM. And now you can see the utilization menu item has been enabled. So there shouldn't be too much data in here, maybe just for the last hour or so. So let's just filter it to that. And we're going to see if the CPU is showing that same spike that we saw on the Azure side. So go to 1 hour here. Let that load. And it looks like that's the right side of that spike. So if we look at the CPU in Azure, you see how it's cascading down back to 0. And you can just barely see it there. But it is collecting the data. It does look the same. RHEL 7.2 demo. Now you can see this is enabled. There's not a whole lot of CPU activity, so you're just going to have to notice the bumps as best you can there. But again, we're just trying to take a quick peek to see that the data that we're expecting to see is the same data that showed up inside Azure. So CPU, we got a couple bumps there. Not too much, but hopefully you can see those. And we'll go back to Azure. We'll click on the RHEL demo. Make sure you're at the Overview tab. And there, so you can see there's 2 bumps for the CPU usage as well. So that basically confirms that we are collecting the correct data in CloudForms and it is being displayed properly. And that concludes the demo. Thank you very much for your time, and I will add some links at the end of this demo with additional information that you can follow up with. So thanks again. Appreciate your time.